Those views are how much a MrBeast video gets when it fails. It's also episodic rather than being a one and done, so they're gonna have this push for weeks. And in addition to all the promo he's been doing recently, he released a video on his main channel where they go from 2,000 contestants to the 1,000 that are on Amazon Prime. So despite, and maybe even to a certain degree, because of the controversies, I mean, the numbers on this thing are probably gonna be insane. But for now, we'll have to wait to see how it all plays out. Also, on the note of entertainment stuff that's probably gonna do amazingly well, did y'all see the Superman teaser trailer today? Before it came out, I was like, yeah, I guess I'll see it whenever. I'm so hyped. I watched that thing, I randomly shed a single tear. I'm not quite sure if it was because of the crypto reveal or Nathan Fillion's bowl cut, but got me excited for a superhero movie again. So obviously, while we won't know if it's good or not until it gets released, I'm rooting for it. And if you haven't seen it yet, I'll include a link in the description. But then, in huge international news, we need to talk about these mass graves in Syria. Because what we're discovering now is as bad, if not worse, than anyone could have imagined. Just to be clear, we were already expecting to be horrified. But going back, both Bashar al-Assad and his father before him, they've been accused of appalling violations of human rights, including, to say the least, arbitrary detention, torture, and extrajudicial killings. And a few years ago, some of the most shocking testimony about the scale of these atrocities came from an anonymous witness who had escaped the Assad regime and shared his experience in a German court and the American Congress. Right? And they actually called him the gravedigger.
I was not prepared for the horror of my duties. Every week, twice a week, 3 trailer trucks arrived, packed with 300 to 600 bodies of victims of torture, bombardment, and slaughter. Twice a week, 3 to 4 pickup trucks with 30 to 40 bodies of civilians that had been executed in Saydnaya prison also arrived for disposal in the most inhumane way.
But even then, of course, there were those who doubted his and other testimony, as well as the satellite imagery that seemed to corroborate his claims. But now, right, the horrors of the Assad regime, they are more visible than ever. In the past week, the rebel group who ousted Assad, they've opened up prisons and detention centers across Syria. Well, of course, there was that controversy surrounding CNN's bungled reporting of a freed prisoner who turned out to be a former intelligence officer of Assad. There is no doubt about the very real evidence that's continued to come out about the horrific conditions endured by detainees. And this is at the same time advocacy groups and investigators have been allowed out into the countryside to verify the testimony of the gravedigger and the likes of Stephen Rapp, for example, who's an international war crimes prosecutor working with the Syrian Civil Society to document evidence of war crimes. And notably, he also previously served as a U.S. ambassador at large for war crime issues, as well as leading prosecutions at the Rwanda and Sierra Leone war crimes tribunals. And even having done all of that, you had him saying about what he is seeing in Syria as, quote, "We really haven't seen anything quite like this since the Nazis." And with that, after visiting 2 mass grave sites near Damascus, he said, "We certainly have more than 100,000 people that were disappeared into and tortured to death in this machine. I don't have much doubt about those kinds of numbers given what we've seen in these mass graves." And a key thing there is that may be a pretty significant underestimate. Because, for example, you had the head of one US-based Syrian advocacy group, in fact, the same guy that helped deliver the gravedigger's testimony, estimating that at least 100,000 bodies were buried at just one of the mass grave sites. With him saying 100,000 is the most conservative estimate. It's a very, very extremely, almost unfairly conservative estimate. Right? And also with that, you have Syrian residents living near and the other confirmed site describing seeing a steady stream of refrigeration trucks delivering bodies which were then dumped into long trenches dug with bulldozers. With one local even saying the graves were prepared in an organized manner. The truck would come, unload the cargo it had, and leave. There were security vehicles with them and no one was allowed to approach. Anyone who got close used to go down with them. And then on top of all that, the International Commission of Missing Persons in The Hague is separately saying that it's received data indicating that there may be as many as 66 as yet unverified mass grave sites in the country. Not to mention, it's more than 150,000 people that are considered missing according to international and Syrian organizations, including the UN and the Syrian Network for Human Rights. Now, with all that said, well, obviously, no one is shedding any tears over the downfall of a monster like Assad. We do need to talk about how the situation in Syria is, of course, still incredibly fragile. Though, you have the rebel leader now in charge continuing to insist that the new Syria will not be a threat, with him also specifically pushing for the easing of sanctions, telling a reporter for the BBC,
"Now, after all that has happened, sanctions must be lifted because they were targeted at the old regime. The victim and the oppressor should not be treated in the same way."
And with that, you had him trying to distinguish the government he envisions for Syria from that of the Taliban in Afghanistan, for example, saying that he believes in education for women.
So this isn't going to be some kind of a caliphate, or you're not going to make Syria into a country like Afghanistan, because you know that there are people who say that maybe you want to behave like the Taliban.
There are many differences between Syria and the Taliban. The way we govern is different. Afghanistan is a tribal community. Syria is completely different. The people just don't think in the same way. The Syrian government and the ruling system will be in line with Syria's history and culture.
So the culture of Syria includes rights for women, it includes education for women, it includes tolerance for people drinking alcohol. Is that all acceptable to you?
When it comes to women's education, of course. We've had universities in Idlib for more than 8 years. I think the percentage of women in universities is more than 60%.
But from there, you had him kind of dodging the question, saying laws about alcohol use, for example, would be decided by a committee of legal experts. And of course, like I always say on the show, for everything, words are words and actions are actions, and we're gonna have to wait to see if they match up. But also, in the meantime, we're waiting to see Turkey's next move. Because very notably, the country is now refuting claims made by State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller that a ceasefire between Turkish-backed rebels and the US-backed Kurdish SDF have been extended, with the Turkish official restating his country's position that the SDF is a terrorist group and vowing to continue the fight. And with that, Turkey and its rebel allies are reportedly building up forces along the Syrian border, raising concern that they're preparing for a large-scale offensive against the Kurds. And then, of course, we have to talk about Israel, because Netanyahu this week visited the buffer zone in Syrian territory that the country is now occupying, saying troops will stay there for the foreseeable future. And of course, that's as we talked about, Israel has also announced plans to expand illegal settlements in the occupied Golan Heights. So that has all drawn a lot of international criticism, and of course, it's another potential source of tension, but right now, only time will tell what's gonna happen with everything. But then, in a quick breather from the news, let's talk about life hacks. Because who else feels like meal planning is basically a part-time job? Or between crazy schedules, trying to eat healthy, and just getting something on the table, it takes up so much time. But picture this: gourmet, quality, chef-crafted meals that are delivered directly to your door and ready in 2 minutes. Because it's a real thing with today's sponsor, Factor. No grocery shopping, no prep work, no cooking fatigue, just incredible meals that actually fit your lifestyle. Right, the other night, Lindsay surprised me with this delicious scampi-style shrimp and salmon from our Factor delivery. She had the garlic pork tenderloin, and to be honest, I don't know which one I liked more. And also what's great with that is that Factor lets us adjust our plan whenever we want. Some weeks we need 4 meals, some weeks 18. You can pause, reschedule, mix up the menu, total freedom. And with over 35 meal options like keto, vegan, and calorie smart, there's something for everyone. And it's not just meals, right? Factor's got snacks, smoothies, juices, and small bites to keep you fueled all day long. Plus, Factor is committed to sustainability, offsetting 100% of delivery emissions and using 100% renewable electricity. So just hit my link in the description to get 50% off and free shipping on your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders with code DeFranco50. You know, trust me, your taste buds and schedule will thank you. But then, CVS Pharmacy has been incentivizing its pharmacists to fill illegal opioid prescriptions for more than a decade, and in doing so, helped fuel the nation's opioid crisis. That is, according to the US Department of Justice, which just filed a complaint against CVS in Providence, Rhode Island, where the company is headquartered. And specifically, you have the DOJ accusing CVS of violating the False Claims Act and Controlled Substances Act by filling prescriptions for controlled substances that had no legitimate medical purpose or were otherwise invalid, with this including prescriptions for, quote, dangerous and excessive quantities of opioids. And with this, according to the complaint, CVS implemented performance metrics and incentive compensation policies that it knew pressured pharmacists to fill prescriptions as quickly as possible without assessing their legitimacy. And employees of the company claiming that CVS was a, in their words, soul-crushing place to work because it was impossible to meet the company's expectations while performing their job safely. With one employee even specifically saying, CVS has concocted an assembly line style of medication preparation and only cares about profits. So with this, CVS has denied the allegations, with a spokesperson saying that the company has cooperated with the Justice Department's investigation for more than 4 years now and strongly disagrees with the allegations and what it described as false narratives outlined in the complaint. Though a key thing is that this is far from the first legal action that we've seen taken in a case like this. In fact, just last week, McKinsey & Company agreed to pay $650 million to end a criminal probe into its role working with Purdue Pharma to turbocharge the sale of addictive painkillers. And just this summer, Rite Aid reached a $410 million settlement related to allegations similar to the ones against CVS. With that coming after opioid-related lawsuits helped push the company into bankruptcy. And I mean, all in all, thousands of lawsuits have been filed against drug makers, distributors, pharmacy chains, and pharmacy benefit managers relating to their alleged roles in the opioid crisis. With this litigation resulting in more than $50 billion in settlements with state and local governments, among others. And as the CVS case shows, now, even after years since the issue's really been thrust into the spotlight, there is still more to be done in holding companies accountable, or at least trying to. And then, if your package is delayed during the holidays, you can can blame Amazon's insatiable greed. That is what Teamsters president Sean O'Brien declared as his union launched the biggest strike against Amazon in the company's history this morning, with him also adding, "We gave Amazon a clear deadline to come to the table and do right by our members. They ignored it. These greedy executives have every chance to show decency and respect for the people who make their obscene profits possible. Instead, they've pushed workers to the limit and now they're paying the price. This strike is on them." And specifically, what he's referring to there is a December 15th deadline that the Teamsters had given Amazon to negotiate a collective bargaining contract. But for years, the companies refused to even recognize the union